Dear students, today in this video I'd like to tell you about different incentives and incentive structures. So, as we discussed in the previous class, the best way possible to align the principal and agent's interests would be if the principal can sell the firm or sell the project to the agent. And that means making the agent the residual claimant to any revenue from the project. But in reality, this is often not possible. For example, the taxi driver may not be able to purchase the medallion or purchase the taxi, and the CEO certainly cannot purchase the entire company. In these cases, the principal has to settle for other forms of incentives to motivate the agent to act in the principal's interest. The principal, for example, myself, could pay the developers for each web page that's developed. If there's a product being sold, instead we could offer a commission for sales of our product. A bonus payments is possible upon completion of the project. That's something that I'm personally considering right now. And another alternative is a promotion tournament, in case there's multiple employees, to try and motivate the employees by competing with each other. Other possibilities abound. We could try to offer some sort of skill or ability-based wage, perhaps based upon output again. And we could think of others as well. Now, the piece rate is perhaps most common. And in most examples we've seen so far, the piece rate can be fairly costly for the firm. But that's just due to the particular settings that we studied. The piece rate can be a very effective form of incentive in the right situation. It has many advantages. Piece rates are simple to understand, and for a lot of products, it's often easy to measure. It can encourage efficient performance, so if I'm being paid per unit of output, then my goal is to maximize output. It can attract more productive workers, so it can avoid adverse selection and might even create some positive selection, in the sense that workers who are more productive are more attracted to a piece rate, and workers who are less productive may be more attracted to a per hour rate. But there's difficulties. The piece rate can be undermined by randomness, so sometimes some projects are uncertain, and how long the project will take and how the project comes out. If it's uncertain and it affects the wage that I'm paid and I dislike risk, then I may not be so motivated if the randomness is a large component of the output. Another problem is that the piece rate is good for one-dimensional tasks. So I'm producing needles like in the pin factory before, or if I'm producing a website, then each page is a one-dimensional object, but there's a lot of aspects that go into the web page. And there's quantity and quality issues that if I'm just paying based upon quantity, then quality would be easy to disregard. Okay, now if we're involved in a sale of a lot of smaller products, we could offer a commission. There could be bonus payments or share of profits for services rendered or products sold. It's similar to piece rate payments, but it's kind of the best thing for relatively independent salespeople. So again, for developing my website, it would have to rely until the website's actually fully developed before any commission would start to be offered. And then the commission would be quite uncertain because it would be based upon how successful the website is. And the commission would kind of be independent of the developer's work because it would take place after the development phase had finished. So commissions are used most successfully and most often for salespeople who operate relatively independently. It also works well in retail settings because in stores monitoring is often easier. Now, when we sell the firm to the agent, when we offer a piece rate contract, when we offer commissions or bonus payments, we as the principal are doing is we're shifting some of the risk from the principal to the agent because there's an uncertain production process and pay is based upon production, and now the agent bears this production risk. That's perfectly fine as long as the agent has the same risk preferences as the principal, as if the agent is risk neutral. But often the way we model the principal and agents is the principal is risk neutral, but agents are risk averse. And if I offer the agent a risky payment scheme, then a risk averse agent may require additional compensation to accept those risky payment schemes. And that can make these payment schemes more costly and possibly more inefficient. So the longer the contract you offer, it tends to be the lower annual wage that you need to pay the employee because they have the additional certainty that the contract will last a longer time. Okay. Now, in a lot of organizations, not in my business, which is a small business, but in large organizations, there can be the chance of advancing to higher hierarchy level. You can be promoted. Often there's advantages to being promoted. There's a higher wage, and there's non-monetary advantages as well. A bigger office, a company car, some additional prestige. And in tournaments, promotion tournaments are used a lot in reality. Now, some advantages for the principal is that incentives are often limited to a few well-performing agents, so it's not quite as expensive as some other incentivization schemes. But the promotions can be discrete, yes or no, they can be infrequent, and there can be negative effects of competition in the case that when we're being judged based upon relative performance, I can try to improve my own performance, but it can be just as well for me to sabotage the performance of others. Finally, there's a famous principle, the Peter Principle, which basically says that if you're very good, then you're likely to be promoted in your job. And so people will continue to be promoted until they reach their level of incompetence, until they reach a position for which they're not well suited for. Okay. So all of these, we talked about some disadvantages. There must be some advantage because we see promotions and promotion tournaments a lot in the workplace. The one major advantage is that only ordinal information is needed. So we don't have to keep track exactly of how much quantity did each agent produce, but we just need to have some idea of who produced the most. And the promotion tournament is credible. It's easy to commit to. The structure, again, like the piece rate, is simple for the workers to understand. But there's some risk still with the promotion incentive scheme as well. So imagine that an agent's production depends upon their ability. It depends upon their effort, and we want to reward the agents for putting in effort. And we also want to reward the agents for having high ability because they produce more. But suppose that there's also some random component in the production process. For example, luck, or it could be that there's different paths that we could take towards a protein product, and some paths happen to be more successful than others. But it doesn't have anything to do with the underlying ability of the agent or the effort. So this random component, as long as it's not predictive for future production, shouldn't really factor into my choice of who do I want to promote. And unfortunately, this random component introduces some uncertainty into the payoff. And the promotion tournament, because there's some risks, it would be okay for the agents if the risks were correlated. So if the same risk affected all agents, then the promotion tournament still selects the right person to be promoted. It still selects the person who had the highest combination of ability and effort. But if the risks are kind of independent, then it could be the case that the person who wins promotion is neither the most skilled nor the hardest working, but just happen to have a better outcome in the random component of their production. Okay. So there is risk, then the agents do face some risk, but if the risk is not independent, then the promotion tournament still properly incentivizes agents because of this feature at the beginning that only ordinal information is necessary to determine the winner. All right. Of course, a promotion tournament only works in substantially large organizations. Now, another alternative is a bonus payment, and a bonus payment combines a fixed wage with a flexible component, and the fixed wage reduces the risk that the agents face, and the flexible component is there to incentivize performance. So it's very common to offer money or shares or stock options. You can offer employee discounts or perks, such as company cars, membership vacations to the highest seller. In general, bonus payments offer a wide variety of performance-based compensation, and it can be a very powerful tool to steer the employee's behavior. So we can look at the fast food industry, and there's a great number of fast food restaurants along highways. The manager of the fast food restaurant has two tasks. He wants to sell many hamburgers because that creates revenue for the firm, but the manager should also want to keep the store clean. And the advantage of clean stores is it makes it more likely for customers to return to the chain, although they may return in other locations. But suppose that the CEO can only observe the amount of hamburgers that are sold. Then one option the CEO could try to do is write some sort of implicit contract, which asks the manager to balance the sales and cleanliness. But why not a piece rate? Well, there's a problem when the manager's pay is based only upon the amount of hamburgers that are sold in the stores. And the problem is that the manager's incentives then are just to sell burgers. The manager won't care about keeping the store clean. The reason why the manager doesn't care about the cleanliness of the store is while cleanliness affects the chain's overall reputation, most business is not from repeat business. Most business is from customers who are unlikely to visit my particular location again. So I'm not incentivized by the reputational effect of trying to have repeat customers. Instead, the only incentivization for the manager is to try and sell as many hamburgers as possible today. And this means there's free riding on the efforts of other stores in being clean. So there's some disadvantage to paying just based upon the amount of hamburgers that are sold. Okay. And the manager will maximize his own sales, but will not maximize cleanliness, which may hurt the chain's reputation. So even if we write an implicit contract, which is based upon hamburgers and cleanliness, if cleanliness isn't really observable, and there's no monitoring, then the manager is going to invest in the activity which is observable. And without monitoring, the marginal rate of return of the two activities has to be the same, because otherwise the activity with the lower return is not performed at all. In the case of the stores, the marginal return of cleanliness is quite low for locations that are only visited once. And so the CEO really has the options of either monitoring the individual locations or accepting the fact that the individual managers will put less effort towards the activity of keeping the stores clean, the activity with the lower marginal rate of return. Okay, so all of these incentivization schemes they've talked about are what we would call extrinsic motivation. They're methods by which a principal may motivate an agent to perform some task when the agent may have different preferences. Intrinsic motivation, instead, is one's own internal self-drive to put an effort towards a task without tangible reward or without sufficient enough tangible reward. So people may be motivated to work on a task due to altruism, idealism, they enjoy the task. And such motivation sits outside of standard economic theory. So there's a experimental study that I like very much from 2000. And high school students were the subjects in the experiment, and they were asked to collect donations for a charity. In the first treatment, the students weren't paid for their efforts. They're just asked to collect donations. They were given an hourly wage, but no additional wage on top of that. In the second treatment, the students were given 1% of the donations that they collected. And in the third treatment, the students were given 10% of all donations that they collected. So what would we expect? The standard thing that we should expect is that the third treatment should have the highest performance, the 10% commission. The second treatment should have the second highest performance, the 1% commission. And treatment 1, which offers no commission at all, no bonus, should have the worst performance. Okay? That's what we should expect. The higher the motivation, the more donations the students collect. Here there's no motivation, here there's some, and here there's even more. But what the experimenters observe actually in real life is it is true that with a high commission, the students work the hardest and get the most donations. But what isn't true is that we have this upward sloping curve. Instead, what they find is when there's a very low commission, the students don't work very hard at all. And then they tend to work harder when there's no commission at all, or even harder when the commission is very high. So the story that the authors tell, and which I find personally compelling, is that the monetary incentives can crowd out the intrinsic motivation of the agents. So people may do things like collecting money for charity because they feel good about what they're doing, or they're doing it for the right reasons. Now, if they also receive some money, they receive some commission, then that might affect their own motivation for doing the task. So in this experiment here, we see that it's best for the charitable organization to either pay well or to not pay at all. There's a nice talk on TED on motivation. You can find it here on the link, and I'll put these slides on Moodle. And otherwise, we're going to meet tomorrow on Friday, and we'll discuss the financial structure of firms. Thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing you then.